Today I'm going to demonstrate how I make two kind of polka dot looking yarns. One of them is on a plied yarn and one is on a singles. The materials that I am using are this Cheviot combed top, because that's what I would prefer to use, combed top, to make thick singles. And what I'm using for the color is some polypay combed top that I combed myself because you need a very little amount. I would estimate on 100 gram skein, I used about 15 grams of the contrast color. And you have a little tuft to work with. This is what's going to make your cocoon. On one of these yarns is a plied yarn and the other is a single. In either case, the first construction that you're making is an even fat single. So that's a whole other technique for another day, but basically how I like to do it is I like to have a fair amount of tension and I do a backwards draft. When you get to the point where you want to do a cocoon, pull off a length and separate your yarn, open it up so you've got a place to put your contrast color. Put it in here, and then it's kind of like core spinning. Get it on there, pull off the rest, and continue making your cocoon. I try to use my fingers more than the wheel, otherwise you're going to have a lot of twist in your single that you don't want there. When I've got my cocoon the way that I want it, I want to make sure that I've got all the twist out of this little tuft because it still needs to stay open so I can join back onto it. And I'm going to let some more twist out ahead. Now, the first yarn is the one that looks fancy, and it's actually easier to do. You've got this single, you've got your cocoon, now tie a knot. When you're making your cocoon, you want to have, it might take a little bit of experimentation, but you want enough color to make the knot so that you don't have your main color in the knot, but also so that you don't have too much of your contrast color showing outside of the knot. So it might take a little bit of experimentation depending on how thick of a single that you're spinning. This is what it's going to look like, and now you're going to join back in. So get your main color, and it can help to open it up a little, and join back in. Keep spinning your single. So let's do that one more time, making a knot. Pull it off. Another trick is to make sure that you have about the same amount of fiber right here as you have in your yarn. If you have a big glob right here, then you're going to have a big thick slub right after your knot, and your yarn isn't going to be even all the way through. Split it. Put your contrast color in here. Add your cocoon. Like I said, I would like using the twist on my fingers rather than the twist on the wheel to avoid getting too much twist. I also, you noticed when I was twisting with my fingers, I almost lost the twist up here, so pay attention to what is happening to the twist on both sides of your yarn, especially if you're doing this where you're leaving it a single, this knot yarn. Okay, make the knot and then adjust it so that all you can see is the cocoon on the knot. Then join back in. And it's as simple as make a few more cocoons to show how we're doing this. And we'll move on to the halo or crescent yarn, which is plied. The consideration to think of when you're making that yarn is, although with the knot yarn you want to make sure that your cocoon is big enough that you can make a knot, so it needs to be somewhere probably close to 1.5 inches, you want your halo to be closer to 1 inch or a little less, because this is what you're going to do when you ply it. So however big your cocoon is however big the loop hanging off of your yarn is, and you don't want it to be you don't want a huge loop hanging off your yarn. You just want a little ball hanging off. Now we're ready for plying. We're going to be plying this with a fine single. You can spin it yourself, or you can just get a thread. And when you have two singles that are such uneven weights, even if you do try and balance them when you ply, you'll still get a bumpy kind of yarn. So I'm just going to intentionally enhance this and do a spiral ply. You're doing this by keeping tension on the fine single so that it's coming straight out from the orifice, and you're letting the fat single wrap around it at an angle. The sharper the angle, the more pronounced the spiral will be. I'm just doing a kind of shallow one. And then when we get to a cocoon, we're going to switch, and we're going to put the fine single at 90 degrees so that it wraps around a couple times above the cocoon. Then we're going to fold the cocoon in half. We're going to wrap the fine single around the bottom of that loop, and then we're going to wrap the fine single around the fat single a couple times below. And now you can just even out some of your plying twist and continue on plying. Just show it one more time a little bit closer. Wrap it a couple of times above at the top of the cocoon. And then even out your plying twist. And away we go. Let's do one more.